This weekend's UFC 261 is sure to be a can't-miss event. Every punch, kick, and knockout means so much more with the DraftKings lineup on the line. DraftKings, the official daily fantasy partner of UFC, is giving you a shot at huge cash prizes. For this weekend's fight, DraftKings is offering all players a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. If you haven't tried it yet, Fantasy MMA is easy to play. Just pick 6 fighters, stay under the salary cap, and pile up points for advances, takedowns, and more. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to compete for a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. Plus, don't forget about basketball and hockey, where DraftKings has even more money up for grabs throughout the week. DraftKings is a safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code TBPN to get a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes throughout the week. That's promo code TBPN to get a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes, only at DraftKings. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. You're listening to Spurscast, episode 608. My name is Paul Garcia, and I'm your host here on the Spurscast. Today I'll be joined by Project Spurs writer Victoria Villareal. In this episode, Vicky and I will discuss the Spurs' improvement on both sides of the court from the three-point line and Derrick White returning to his prior level of play. Let's go ahead and get started here. Vicky, how have you been?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well myself. So, the Spurs are doing well as well. We've seen that with this team compared to just a few weeks ago when they were on that 5-game losing streak. There's been a lot more winning going on with this team. So let's jump right into this episode. So it's been quite a while since I've last recorded. There's actually been 5 games that have passed, but the Spurs have been playing good basketball during that time. They have gone 3-2 in these last 5 games. Because let's do a quick little recap of how they've been performing. So let's begin first, unfortunately, with a bad loss. Last Friday, you and I recorded this on Friday afternoon, a week ago. Last Friday, they lost by 1 point to the Portland Trail Blazers at home in San Antonio. The Spurs, this is a bad loss because, for one, the Spurs were favored in this game. Dame Lillard was out for Portland. And then also the Spurs built a 16-point lead, but then the Blazers came back against them and won the game. And this is the first time that happened where the Spurs were up by 15 and they let a big lead go. They're now 18-1 in that stat. Then we move on to Saturday, was the second out of a back-to-back, and the Spurs get an excellent win here. They go to Phoenix and they defeat the Suns by 26 points. They were up by as many as 31, and this is an impressive win because, for one, Phoenix was favored by 12, but the Spurs also sat multiple veteran players. They sat DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and Patty Mills. We know that they got fined later on that week for doing that, and Phoenix was fully healthy, and so the Spurs actually just pretty much wiped the floor with Phoenix. Then the next game on Monday this past week was it was more of a taking care of business kind of win for the Spurs. They won by 15 at the Pacers in Indiana. The Spurs were favored in this game, and also the Pacers were missing Miles Turner and Sabonis as well. So the Spurs basically took care of business there. On Wednesday, the Spurs went back home and they faced the Heat, and this was a kind of an understandable loss. Miami was they were barely favored in this game, and it was a pretty close game. But then in the second half, the Heat used their zone defense, which they're really good at. They're the best in the league at doing so, as we've seen. And so they ended up getting a comfortable 20-point win, the Heat, against San Antonio. Then the most recent game was another one of those games where the Spurs took care of business. They won by 15 points against the Pistons in San Antonio at home. The Spurs were favored by this in this game, and also both San Antonio and Detroit sat multiple players. So what do you want to say about anything from these last 5 games?
I'm just really pleased with the way they've looked. Honestly, I know we can't contribute any of this to any one player, but since Lonnie Walker's return, it's looked like a world of a difference for them. They had that really rough losing streak. Now it's, a couple weeks back when that kind of ended and they were they started to be able to win again. But it felt like we were never going to see a win from the Spurs for like the longest time. So really, I mean, there's a lot of improvement. I know we're going to talk about 3-point shooting, which I'm really excited to talk about. And then also, just seeing a lot more contribution from Derrick White. I really think that he's starting to, fit in and find his place again after being out and having just an injury-ridden and illness-ridden beginning of the season. Or first half, I guess. So, yeah, there have been a lot of positives. They're stuck in a tight place right now, being in the 10th spot, but I think they've got a pretty nice, comfortable lead ahead of who is it, in 11th?
The Pelicans and the Thunder.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah, so let's look at the state of the team where they stand right now. As you just said, there's only 14 games left now. We're getting here toward the end of the season. They're 29-29 after last night's win. They moved up to 9th, but they could move back to but they could move back to 10th today if Golden State wins. So if the Warriors get a win, the Spurs could fall back to 10th by the time this evening happens. The Spurs have made a minor improvement on offense. They moved up from 19th to 18th since I last recorded. They've also moved back into the top 10 defensively, where they're 10th now. They were 11th last time I had recorded. As far as lottery position, because they're now 9th, that's actually made their odds worse. Right now, they would get the 14th pick as the projection because they did better. So in a way, if they can't get 7 or 8, then they probably want to stay at 10 because that's a better lottery pick for them, most likely. And then, just looking at the schedule going forward, they do have now the actual hardest schedule left in the league. It used to be Houston, but now as I most recently checked, it's the Spurs. And there's still no consecutive days off for this team until the end of the season. And like we mentioned earlier, they're 5-3 since that 5-game losing streak. So do you want to say anything about the state of the team, how they're doing?
I think they're on good track right now. I do think that those teams that are in the play-in projection right now, they're all kind of, fluctuating. We've seen Dallas go through bouts of pretty bad, losing bouts here and there. So I really do think anything could still happen between now and, these 14 games that the Spurs have. So I think for now they're going to continue with the trying strategy. But like you said, they're in a little bit of a tough situation with the, looking forward to the draft and the potential pick. If they do, if they want to look forward, if they want to be forward thinking and think about the future of the team, is it better to just, remain in 10th and yes, still go to the play-in, but the 9th position really doesn't give them a better option unless they're up in the 7th or 8th seed. There's not really a positive to being in the 9th right now. Sorry.
Yeah. And so something you mentioned earlier was that, just the fact that they're pretty comfortable that they're going to, as far as like my schedule looking for them, forward for them, I pretty much penciled in that they're going to be in either that 9th, 10th game or the 7th, 8th game.
Right.
Because it just looks like you said, the Pelicans and the Thunder, they're just running out of games to catch up to the Spurs. They're not playing like excellent basketball either. Mm-hmm. And so even if the Spurs struggle here down the stretch, like, maybe they play 500, just slightly below 500 ball, they're just going to run it. The other teams that are trying to chase them, they're just going to run out of games to try to catch the Spurs or the Warriors. And so I think that in a way, they look, as of right now that you and I are recording this, they just look like they're in a comfortable position to get into at least that play-in game. And then, the Spurs actually eliminated the Rockets and the Timberwolves with that win yesterday, just from getting into the playoffs, even though we know that those teams are tanking and, trying to get the best pick. So let's move on to our second topic here. And this is the improvement from three on both sides of the court for the Spurs lately. So, let's first talk about their offense. One thing I've seen is, they have improved in their wide open 3-point accuracy. Now, so they're now making 37.6% of their wide open threes, which is 22nd, which obviously isn't great. That doesn't sound very good, but they were 25th, just a week ago. So we have seen some slight improvement from this team. A big part of that is a player that you mentioned earlier, Lonnie Walker, the fourth being back. He's been on fire from three. He's now shooting 42% on wide open threes, which is tied with Patty Mills. So that they are the top two players in making wide open threes. And then also, the 3-point line is the biggest struggle for the Spurs this entire season. They always lose that battle for the majority of the season, but they've actually been winning the battle or at least tying their opponent in that battle. In 5 of their last 8 games, they've actually either won the 3-point line or at least tied the opponent. And we know that that's a huge issue for this team because that's their biggest deficit area is the 3-point line. So what do you want to say about their offense from 3?
Well, it's been looking amazing. Yes, like you said, Lonnie Walker, of course, that's really awesome to see from a young player, for him to be taking that sort of leadership position in the distance shooting. He's got a lot of confidence. I really like his stroke. And, I know he's doing really well on wide open threes, but, even the contested ones, he's looking really great. And then also Derrick White has been really awesome from behind the three. I think, he had something like, where was it? Let me see. He shot, 6 of 11 against the Pacers. That's pretty impressive. And I know that's, on the good end of things, but he's trying more and he's attempting more, which is great because, the more that you attempt, hopefully, the more you're going to make. So I think just seeing that and having multiple players on the team shooting a lot more threes is really giving the Spurs a lot. They're knocking them down, and then they build that confidence. They realize that they can knock it down. So they've looked great. Hopefully this can continue because, like you said, that's definitely been one of their woes. And in the league today, especially, they need to perform well from the three. So I'm excited seeing how they're looking. Hopefully this continues through the end of the season.
And I think two other players who have actually been shooting pretty well from three as well are DeJounte Murray. He's been a little bit more confident with his three ball when he has to take it. He's actually, I'm just looking it up now, he's making 38% of his wide open threes. And then Keldon Johnson has also been shooting well, even though I can't see his numbers here. I don't know why they're not popping up. But Keldon's also been, there they are, 36%. It's not great, but it's still, he's making more than 33%, which is getting over a point per shot. So I think that even those players who are kind of hesitant to take threes and they use it as their last resort, even they have been shooting pretty well in DeJounte and Keldon as well. On those wide open threes. Now let's go ahead and look at the defense on the three ball, and this is a huge improvement for this team. Lately. So one thing we've seen in the data is improvement in limiting opponent threes. They're back into the top 10 of not giving up 3-point looks. There's teams are only averaging 32.8 against them attempts, which is 9th for the Spurs. Opponent 3-point accuracy has also dropped. Teams are now shooting 37% against them, which is 21st, which obviously doesn't sound great, but again it was worse a week ago. They've also held. They've actually kept opponents from generating wide open threes. And this is a stat that I track. For the season, the Spurs are letting teams get 54% of their threes that are wide open. But in 4 of those last 6 games, they've actually been holding to like 30, 35, 36% in a lot of these games. So they've been doing a good job of not letting teams get those wide open threes. And then just something that Coach Pop said was that he mentioned recently in an interview that the team is running opponents. They are running opponents off the 3-point line. So I know that there's 2 stories to this. It could be that they are finally getting more comfortable around each other. They've just grown better with their chemistry, and so they're just getting better defensively. And also part of it could be the teams that they're playing, because as we've gone through some of these games, we've talked about how multiple teams have been resting a lot of players, and just players have been in and out of the lineups. And maybe some of these teams aren't very good 3-point shooting teams as well. So there is some give and take there in the data. But what do you want to say about their defense from what you've seen?
Right. Well, like you said, there's a lot of factors that could play into that. But I do think that there was some sort of switch that turned on for them, those 6 games back, that I think they really started to realize that the end of the season was coming. They weren't in a position that they wanted to be in. And some certain players started stepping up a lot more. And, I don't know exactly what they changed, except, like you said, maybe the potential of resting players here and there and giving them the opportunity to be quicker on defense. That could be it. But I mean, it's obvious when you lay out the stats like that they have improved greatly over the last 6 games. It's amazing how well they're defending from 3 now. It's not great, like you said, in terms of compared to other teams in the league, but compared to how they were performing, it's like an amazing improvement and something that, definitely fans should be proud of. And it's great because there are, those, select players on the Spurs that are great defenders. They just have it in them. But to see that, maybe it's kind of rubbing off. Maybe the defensive chemistry is a little bit more there. It's taken a while this season, but I think finally having all the pieces together is giving them the opportunity to sort of fill in those holes. And it's obvious, that it's happening even with the vets playing their minutes, their usual minutes. It's working. So, something they did is right or was right, and it's showing.
Yeah, and I just going back to the 3-point line battle. I mean, that's the biggest difference for this team is that they, when you look up their total points, they're winning the 2-point battle against every team in the league, and then also again on the free throw line battle. But it's when you throw in the 3-point line, that's where they're a minus 30 from there overall for the season. Not for the whole season. I mean, just in terms of looking at other stats, they're minus 30 overall, and it's not just they're getting outscored by like 300 points from the 3-point line. But that's a huge difference. If they can win the 3-point battle, whether it's outscoring the opponent or whether it's just tying the opponent in threes, they're giving themselves a chance every night. And we've seen that with a lot of these games lately where they've been holding multiple teams below 100 points. So again, that's a huge stride for this team, especially if they get into that 9-10 playoff battle, that one game play, and then if they were to win that game, well, then they can move on against the 7 or 8 seed. And so again, if you take away the biggest disadvantage for this team and you start making that either an advantage or at least tying it and making it kind of like a level playing field, then they're going to have a pretty good shot here going forward.
Totally. Yep.
Let's go and move on to our third topic, and that's Derrick White kind of getting back to his old stuff. As you mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of progress from Derrick White. Now that he's finally getting healthy, he's dealt with multiple injuries. Before the season, he was out after the bubble for he had off-season surgery on his foot. And then, and of course, during the season, we know that he was amongst the players that got COVID in February as well. So Derrick's just, and then, he had another injury, remember, in I think it was a toe injury in January when he first came back. So, so he's just been kind of plagued by the injury bug all year, but he's finally getting healthy, and we've seen him, his progression kind of develop here in March and April now that he's been on the floor for pretty much all these games. So as we've seen here, let's first talk about his offense. Scoring by month. In February, 11.2 points. In March, 14.4 points, so it's increased by about 3 points. Then in April, right now, that the month's not even over, he's actually averaging 18.5 points. His three-point accuracy and attempts has also risen. In February, he was attempting 5.7 threes, he was shooting 32%. In March, he was averaging 6.5 threes, so about one more three a game, 33% accuracy. And then now in April, he's attempting 7.8 threes and making 36%. And I think something interesting there is that Derrick told us in a recent interview that in the offseason when he was hurt, because of the surgery, he just really could not work on his three, and so he's really not had a chance to even work on his outside shot. And now that he's finally getting that time, and it's just, I guess, in the in-game pretty much progression, we're starting to see his three ball come back, and that's huge because aside from Lonnie and Patty, he's one of the top 3 players who attempts threes on this team, and so he's responsible for a huge volume of their threes and makes of their threes. Just last night against the Pistons, Coach Pop said after the game, I think that he's gotten to the point where he's almost his old self, so even Coach Pop sees that Derrick's finally getting back to his former self. Just his shot profile, where do his shots come from? His first shot is the three ball. 54% of his shots come from three, then 39% of his shots come in the paint, so we know he likes to attack, and then only 8% of his shots come from the mid-range, so he really avoids that area unless he really, really has to in a possession. He's now third behind Patty and Lonnie on launching pull-up threes, and that's huge because a lot of defenses like to go under on the Spurs on screens. So Patty, Lonnie, and Derrick are those 3 players who will, attempt a three against you if you're backing off of them. On drives, his tendencies are to pass, shoot the ball, or if not, get to the free throw line. He's excellent in assist percentage for a wing, and then he also doesn't turn it over much. He can create on his own if he needs to in a possession. He's also good at drawing shooting fouls, and then also the Spurs we see as a team are outscoring opponents by 5.2 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. That's in the 80th percentile according to Cleaning the Glass. So what do you want to say about what you've seen from Derrick on offense?
Well, first off, I'm a huge Derrick advocate. I have always really appreciated his style of play, and I think that he has incredible court vision. I think that, honestly, I would probably say that he's, I love DeJounte, but I would say that Derrick has slightly better court vision, and he really knows how to bring out the best in the bigs. It's something that I've noticed since he came back, that, Jakob Poeltl performs so much better whenever Derrick is on the floor. And, he does the same for Eubanks. He's just got that really good insight as to where everybody's at every given time. So he's, aside from that and seeing all of those positives while he's on the court, it's just amazing to me that he's second on the Spurs for blocks per game. Yes. That's just as a guard, that just blows my mind. And then, like you said, in April, he's averaging 18.5 points. I mean, that's really great for him after those few months where he was really struggling. And, I, for one, was kind of worried. Is he ever going to get back to it? Did COVID really affect him that much? I know a lot of players who had COVID are sort of having a hard time getting back into it. But, seems like he's had a pretty good recovery now, and I think he is sort of back to where he was before. I think we could still see even a little bit more from him, and it's definitely given the Spurs the advantage this month, and it's something to look forward to. If they don't make it to the playoffs this year, Derrick White is one of those players that's going to be the stronghold on the team, the consistent one, and that for me is exciting.
Yeah, that's something that I was about to mention there too. Was what you just said there was like this is a glimpse of what the future could look like, because in the event that DeRozan decides to leave the team, well then Derrick's going to be pretty much, it looks here, like the primary playmaker, and we saw that, just a glimpse of that yesterday against the Pistons, where he got 26 points, and we see that he's making those leaps, and especially too with like that pull up three. With if Patty also leaves this offseason, well then Derrick and Lonnie could become like the two go-to 3-point shot makers for this team. So yeah, there's definitely like even if this team doesn't get into the playoffs or doesn't go far, well then at least this shows a kind of paints a picture of the kind of progression that Derrick and Lonnie can make.
Exactly.
Let's move on to his defense. Derrick, something you just mentioned here was the blocks. Yes. He is elite in getting blocks for a wing player. He's fourth now, according to Cleaning the Glass, behind only Matisse Thybulle, Keelan Martin Jr., and Derrick Jones Jr. in blocks for a wing player.
Wow.
Opponents are scoring 0.7 points per 100 less when he's on the floor, which is about close to average. So again, it's still good though. They're not scoring more. When you look at him compared to all his teammates in just most defensive metrics, he's about a solid in most of those metrics. But there's nothing that he's like really bad at. But there's also nothing that he's really good at in terms of some of those base defensive metrics, like steals, blocks, deflection. I mean, not blocks. Steals, deflections, fouls, all those different areas, rebounds. He provides the Spurs a lot of versatility because he's able to switch with primary matchups with DeJounte Murray. So whenever you look at the matchups each night, he and DeJounte pretty much share the same player that they're defending because they're so good about switching either of them or just picking up someone on the other side of the court. And then also he's first on the team in charges drawn with 11, and then also when you look at him compared to all NBA players, he's actually 15th amongst and that's interesting considering that like you mentioned earlier, Derrick's pretty much missed a lot of this season. So what do you want to say about his defense?
Defensively, I think that he's just a really great asset. Like you mentioned, like he's sort of just in the middle field for a lot of those other defensive metrics aside from blocks. But honestly, I think that he's still doing well. I think the fact that we've got, DeJounte Murray, who is an amazing, he's got that wingspan and he gets so many steals. It sort of, pushes Derrick down a little bit. But I think that Derrick, he provides a great defensive presence. I think that he's really great at intimidating defenders because of the fact that he's, not afraid to get in their face and take the charge. And he's just got really good timing at being able to get all these charges. So he's, like I said, he's got great court vision. He knows where he needs to be at all times. And yeah, like you said, that's amazing that he's 15th in the NBA, having played, maybe I don't know the exact number, but he's played a lot less than a lot of these other people who are up there ahead of him, I'm sure. So, good for him. He's really showing what he can do. And I hope that this just continues. I hope the injuries are done for him because I'm ready to see him continue playing. And if they do make the playoffs, I think that, Derrick's one of the ones who's had experience of the young core. He was there the last time. I guess DeJounte was too. But, I mean, he's got a little bit of that under his belt. So that'll be really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned there, he's pretty much missed like 2 months of the season because he didn't make his way back to February, mid-February.
Right.
So Spurscast listeners, don't forget to visit projectspurs.com. We have a lot going on over on the website. Analysis by Steven Anderson after each game, after they're completed. Colin Reed continues to make those audio and video pieces. The latest one is the PS Audio Extra, looking ahead to the 2021 off seasons, the Spurs' cap situation. Michael DeLeon continues to provide game previews before each game. Our latest prospect watch by Benjamin Bornstein is over Raekwon Gray, so make sure you check that out as the draft approaches in the coming months. And then also our newest writer, Rocky Garza Jr., has his latest piece called "The Spurs' Youth-Led Win Over Suns Offers Optimism for the Future." And this is a pretty good piece by Rocky of just showing what the future potential is when the Spurs set out all their veterans in that game, that most recent win against the Suns. You saw what the future could look like for this team in that game. So Rocky kind of highlights that in that piece. Thanks again to Vicky for joining me here on the Spurscast, and also to Michael DeLeon for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.